All right, number 10 from the Chapter 5 homework. This problem reads, Capstone Crowns is considering a project that will produce cash inflows of $11,000 in year 1, $24,000 in year 2, and $36,000 in year 3. What is the present value of these cash inflows if the company assigns the project a discount rate of 14%? Okay, number 10 is the first problem that we've seen that asks us to find the present value of a series of unequal cash flows. Okay. Up until this point, for Chapter 5, we've had a series of payments going on, a series of cash flows in between the present value and the future value, but they've always been the same. Okay? And as long as that's a level payment, right, the payment's the same every single period, we can use the time value keys and we can just assign that payment to the payment key and let the time value keys take care of that for us. This one's a little bit different in that each cash flow is different, right? So we can't use the payment keys on the calculator. It's no good to us. What we've got to do is we've got to calculate the present value of each one of these cash flows received at the end of year 1, one at the end of year 2, and one at the end of year 3. And there are two ways we can do it. The first is using techniques we already know how to do with the calculator, and that's what you see drawn here, where we simply find the present value of $11,000 at the end of year 1, plus the present value of $24,000 at the end of year 2, and then plus the present value of $36,000 received at the end of year 3. Okay, so when you see two ways here, the first one is to find the present value of cash flows and add them up. The number 1 down here, I know the way I've written this is kind of confusing. That's right below the problem that it corresponds to the number 1 way up here is I've found the present value here of the $11,000, here of the $24,000, and then here of the $36,000, and then over to the right I just added up all the present values. Okay, I'm not going to show you how to do that on the calculator. I'm going to assume at this point that you already know how to do it because we did a whole bunch in Chapter 4, and we've certainly done quite a bit of it here in Chapter 5 already. Okay, so you can look at that and work it that way if you're more comfortable doing it, and you're more than welcome to. Okay, that's quite a bit of legwork. The calculator actually has a shortcut for us. It has a cash flow menu, which is a nice little spreadsheet that can solve for an interest rate of a stream of cash flows, or can give us a present value of a stream of cash flows. Okay, and it's a lot less legwork to use. So what I'm going to demonstrate is how to use that cash flow menu to solve this problem. And anytime you have a series of unequal cash flows there, so you can't use the payment key and the time value functions, this is a little cleaner way to get at it rather than to having to calculate the present value of each one of these. Here we've only got 3, so it's not so onerous to do, but you could have up to 10, 12 of these things, and it would be a lot of keystrokes to get there, and a lot of potential for mistake if you do something wrong. All right, so let's use the cash flow menu. Let me show you how to do that. All right, the cash flow menu is, you open it up by pressing the CF button on your calculator right here. It's on the second row, just to the right of the second key. All right, now the cash flow menu works just like your time value keys. It stores everything and it keeps it, even if you turn the calculator off. All right, so what I would encourage you to do is every time, just like the time value keys, every time you open up the cash flow menu, let's clear it out and make sure we don't have anything still in there from a previous problem. And the way you do it is different than the time value keys. You're going to hit second, just like before. But now you're going to hit clear work, which is all the way on the bottom left, right above the clear key. And so second, clear work. And that clears out anything that's stored inside your cash flow menu. Okay, so the way I've written this, it doesn't give you the actual keystrokes to put this into the problem. What it gives you is what value to store for each entry, similar to the way I write out the time value stuff when I say n equals I over y equals PV equals. That's not the actual keystrokes, right? You know that's different. It's what you store to each one. So let's walk through how you do this, what the actual keystrokes are. For this particular problem, we want to know what the present value is. And in the cash flow menu, the CF0 here is the initial cash outlay, right? It is the present value. We're going to want to make it solve this for us, so we're going to leave it blank, or I'm going to leave 0 in there, which is essentially leaving it blank. And the way this is going to work, because the cash flow menu will solve for net present value for us, which is something that's slightly different from a straight-up present value that we haven't gotten to yet. But if we leave this guy as 0, then we solve for net present value. It will be giving us just a straight present value. Okay, so I'm going to leave cash flow 0 equal to 0, which you can see right here. And that's what I've got. So I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to hit the down arrow key, which is going to take me to the next entry in the spreadsheet. And what you see now on your calculator is CO1. Okay, what your calculator is asking for now is your first cash flow 01. What is the first payment that you're expecting to see, or the first payment that you're expecting to make, depending on what the problem is? Okay, what's the value of that payment? In this particular problem, it's a positive $11,000 that we receive at the end of year 1. So when we see CO1 on the display, we're going to type in 11,000. All right, and now it's a little bit backwards from the time value keys. There's no CO1 key to press to store it there. So what we've got to do is press Enter to store it as the CO1 value. Okay, so we typed $11,000 and then pressed Enter. And notice what happened. We went from seeing just a straight $11,000 with no decimal places. When we pressed Enter, we see the 4 decimal places there. We see CO1 equals and the 11,000 with the 4 decimal places. When you see the decimal places, you know that you've actually stored that value to the 11,000 to the CO1. Okay, so now we've got the 11,000 stored. We're going to hit the down arrow key to go to the next entry. And what we see is F01. Right? And this is a little bit different than before. What the calculator is asking you for now is how many times are you going to see that payment that you just entered. F01 stands for frequency of 01. So how many times are you going to see that CO1 payment? For this particular problem, we're only going to see it once. We get that 11,000 at the end of year 1. Okay? And 1 is the default for the frequency key, so if you've cleared it out, it's going to be 1 already. So we can just keep that there. We don't have to press 1 and then enter. It's already stored. We can just hit the down arrow key and go to the next entry. Okay? What we see now is CO2, or cash flow 2. And your calculator wants to know, okay, I've got the first cash flow. I know you're getting it once. Now what's the next cash flow that you're going to see? And for this problem, it's $24,000. So 24,000. And then we have to press Enter to store it as that cash flow 2. And we see that CO2 equals, and the 4 decimal places behind it, we know that we've actually entered the 24,000 for that CO2 entry. Okay, that guy's in. Let's go to the next entry. We'll hit the down arrow key, and it asks for FO2. So the frequency of cash flow 2. How many times are we going to see that $24,000 payment? Well, with this problem, we're only going to see it once at the end of year 2. So the frequency of O2 is 1. That's the default in there, so we can leave that guy alone and just hit the down arrow key to go to the next entry. Okay? What it's asking for now is what's your next cash flow, the CO3, cash flow 3. For this problem, it's a positive 36,000 to us. So we type in 36,000 and then hit Enter to store it for the CO3 value. Okay. We can hit the down arrow key, and it wants to know frequency of cash flow 3. How many times are we going to see it? Again, it's just going to be 1 time. Okay, now honestly, I don't know how many entries you can put in here, but it's quite a few. You can keep hitting the down arrow key and see what's in there, but if you don't enter anything for cash flow 4, you just leave it at 0, because in this problem we're not getting anything after this. You can hit the down arrow key again and ask for the frequency of that 0. You don't enter, it's 0 because it was 0, so that's now the default. Okay? And if you don't enter anything there, the calculator knows, okay, we're done. We're not seeing anything else. So you hit the down arrow key again, it takes you back to cash flow 0. You're back at the beginning of your spreadsheet. Okay? So it's pretty smart. It knows when you're done. What we want to do now is solve for the present value. But we haven't entered an interest rate yet. Right? And the way you use the cash flow menu is kind of strange. So the first couple times you do it, you'll probably have to practice it to remember. But here's how we have to solve for the present value. There's no place to just enter the interest rate. Okay? What I have to do is hit NPV, because that's what I want to solve for. I want to solve for the present value, but in the cash flow menu, it's going to give us net present value. Okay? Since we left cash flow 0 blank, the net present value and the present value are exactly the same. There's no difference. So that's fine. When I press the NPV key to tell the calculator, hey, I want you to find present value for me, it says I equals. The calculator says, hey, I need an interest rate to discount those payments by. Now, you haven't given me that yet. So we can enter it now. When we see I equals a 0, we can type in our discount rate of 14%. Okay, so we type in 14 and then press Enter. Okay, similar to the time value keys, when the calculator asks for an interest rate, it knows that it's in percent terms. So you don't have to give it the decimal of 0.14. You can give it the 14 straight up, and it knows, hey, that means 14%, and it'll calculate it correctly. Okay, so we hit 14 and then Enter. We see the I equals and the 14 with the 4 decimal places, so we know that it has stored the 14 as the interest rate. Now to get back to the NPV, again, it's kind of strange. We hit the down arrow key. Okay? And we see NPV equals 0. Okay? And now we hit the compute key, and it'll actually give us the present value. So we press compute, and we see the $52,415.32. Okay? So that is the present value of those 3 cash flows received at the end of year 1, 2, and 3. Okay? So a little strange to get used to using the cash flow menu, but once you've done it a few times, it's so much faster than calculating the present value of each individual cash flow. Now, if you're just simply more comfortable doing it the way that we've done it up until this point, where you're just calculating the present value of each cash flow, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just if you're willing to invest the time to learn how to use the cash flow menu on the calculator, it's much, much faster, and there's much fewer keystrokes and less to keep track of to add all those present values up, so there's just fewer chances of making a mistake. All right, so I encourage you to learn how to use that cash flow menu. It'll go much faster for you, and there's less chance of making a mistake. But again, if you're just more comfortable going with this way, absolutely go for it. There's nothing wrong with that.